Today's episode of the Press Box Podcast, that would be episode number 54, we'll welcome back Stanton Cameron. He is a returning guest for us. We had him on a couple of years ago, a former professional baseball player with a variety of organizations, and grew up locally here in the Knoxville area. We want to talk to him about this Major League Baseball season. As we've said before, it's been a really different MLB season with 60 games and kind of the change to the playoffs and the big break and kind of the two spring trainings. So we're going to get his perspective, a player's perspective, on what it took to take that break from spring training into the summer, as well as get his thoughts on what it's like to go through a shortened season, and we'll finish up talking a little bit about the playoffs, and finally get his take on our Ultimate World Series champions bracket that we unveiled a few months back, and see if he thinks the '98 Yankees are really the best team of all time in the past 50 years. So without further ado, Stanton Cameron on the Press Box Podcast.
Okay, welcome back to the Press Box Podcast. Today we have a special treat for everyone. One of our most favorite people in all the world is going to rejoin us today, Stanton Cameron, former professional baseball player known as the Hit Doctor, and we love Stanton to death, and we had a great conversation with him a couple years ago where we kind of talked about his career and his coming through the ranks at Powell High School, but today we're going to talk about more current events. So Stanton, great to have you on again.
My pleasure. And you guys are my favorite family.
Well, we love to talk to you, and we can't wait for the next time we can all get together again. So just catch us up a little bit. Tell us where you're at these days. I know the last time we talked to you, you were living in Boston. I'm assuming that's still your regular residence?
It is. We're in Florida right now. Technically, this is the place that we call home, Jupiter, Florida.
Gotcha.
Boston, my wife got a job up there a couple years ago, and that's when last time we spoke. We were in just moving into our apartment up there, and then we got a different place up there now, and we've just kind of go back and forth, really, convenience of the jobs.
Understood completely. So let's talk a little baseball. Obviously, this has been a strange year for a lot of reasons. I mean, I think 2020, probably 50 years from now, people will be talking about the year 2020 and all that's gone on with COVID-19 and all that. And it's affected professional sports quite a bit, baseball being one of those sports. So I guess I'll start by asking you, what's your impression of the way baseball has kind of handled this whole thing?
Well, it's as far as how it got restarted. Of course, that's it's tough to talk about because you don't know the inside part of what's going on between the union, and I mean you hear what's on the news and what has occurred.
Right.
So that's tough to kind of digest just from the inside track with the unions and that sort of situation, but. Glad that it's gotten started. Of course, it's a little weird, and to hear fans that are not there and that sort of stuff. But it's good to have the game back, definitely, and check out the games here and there when we can.
Yeah. So, in terms of their actual plan, what's your take on what they did? Do you like the 60-game season? Would you rather see them try to play maybe 100 and push the playoffs back a little bit? What's your take on like the fundamentals of what they actually did?
Well, I don't think that they really could have pushed the season back too far because if the Red Sox ended up in the World Series, you might have snow for the game.
Right.
So pushing the season back, I think, would have been tough. It'd have been nice to have had 100 games, but I'm sure there's a lot of strong personalities, strong heads, and great minds also that did the algorithm to get us here where we are at 60 games.
Well, let me ask you this question. I mean, you touched a little bit on the union, and obviously that's a big factor when any kind of negotiations are going on. But obviously, there was hopes at one time that they could start this thing in June, but there was a lot of going back and forth between the owners and management and the union on what they were going to be paid, how they were going to be paid, so forth and so on, which kind of delayed the start of the season, so they couldn't play more games. So, and I know you probably haven't been keeping up with all that, but as a former player, do you feel that the players were kind of on the right side of that, or do you feel the owners were, or do you have any kind of feelings at all about that?
Well, of course, I'll always be loyal to the union,
Sure.
but they could have. I think that there could have been some more progress with the players themselves, and they could have. I feel like they could have started in June.
Right.
But again, there's a lot of math that goes into how it's going to happen, who's going to get paid, and how the trickle down effect of the money is going to come to each player, and vice, on down the funnel. So many rabbit holes to follow, but.
Right.
We'd like to think it's real simple, and we'd like to think the players would be simple-minded. I don't know if that's the proper term that I need to use, but,
Right.
Get the game rolling and get it going. I don't think it would have been that big of a deal. But, there are dollars and cents involved, which are huge.
Right.
So
Right.
that's what made the decisions.
Right. That's right.
Yeah, no, I think that I kind of agree with you. I side with the players as well. I think that they were just ultimately asking to be able to be paid for the games they're going to be playing, right? So kind of a prorated deal, which is what I think they ended up getting.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
I agree.
I think they did.
They should get paid what they're going to get paid. No doubt about that. But again, it could go on either side. How much here, how much there, what it's worth, the fan base, the tradition of the game, and again, all the trickle down effect that is involved.
Okay, let's kind of switch it more to something that a player would be more in tune with. Let's talk about the way this all kind of shook out. If you were a player, okay, and spring training actually started, and I think they went through
about half of it,
maybe half of it before they shut everything down, and then everybody kind of sat around for a while, and a lot of players could work out because they had private areas or whatever, but there were no gyms open for a while and all that sort of thing. And then they kind of restarted it with a spring training that was at the home sites of all these teams. So how does that affect a player when you start and stop? Something that obviously hasn't happened in, I don't even know if it's ever happened, maybe World War II. So how does that affect a player going into a season?
Well, I mean, as far as being able to get ready, and Joseph knows this inside and out. Also, as far as the injury aspect of things, when getting ready for a game, and being able to make cuts, moves, react, the twists and turns of any athletic sport. Physically, it takes some time. Spring training is definitely a place to get yourself in play shape, but
right.
It is. Most guys aren't really at their top game when they come out of spring training.
Right.
The goal is to stay healthy, and it's a bit of the start and stop is going to be tough because when you actually get into a game with adrenaline flowing, there are some dangers that are involved, and your body's not ready to react.
Right. Right.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I think there's two aspects that you have to account for. There's the physical aspect, like you talked about. Because I've talked to players that they'll hit all off season, they'll throw, their arms will be ready and things like that. They'll get out to spring training and their bodies will just be sore from standing around in cleats for 5 hours a day, right? Because they're not doing that in the off season. So that's definitely one aspect. And then there's also the timing aspect. A former player, a former hitter yourself. How long does it take you to get ready to have major league at bats? Or so like Ralph just said, you have they went through about half of spring training. You have the long break. If you're going to restart, how much time do you need to kind of get ready to play games and have at bats?
Well, I'll call it at about 50 at bats live pitching. Mm-hmm. But that runs into a week. Basically 10 days.
Okay, yeah.
So between 50, 75 at bats before you're really ready to roll. And, if we're talking about when a season kicks off, you're kind of getting acclimated to where you are, you're, being back home. If you had a full spring training, it's just a whole different gear. You have fans in the stands, more adrenaline's coming, through you, so, I'm gonna call it at 50. How about that?
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. But and in your opinion as well, when you have a restart like that and maybe a short spring training here like they did this summer, who do you think has the advantage, the pitchers or the hitters?
Well, that is a tough one. I'm gonna say that the hitters had a little bit more advantage. Due to the sharpness of a pitcher trying to pick around the plate.
Right.
Their location's going to be a little off. I think the hitters would have a better chance moving deeper into a count on a regular basis.
Okay. Yeah, I think also too, from a hitter's perspective, you mentioned 50 at bats, and but in spring training, you're playing exhibition games, and you're facing live pitching from an opponent who's technically trying to get you out. They're obviously working on things, but they're also trying to get you out. Whereas this kind of startup spring training, if you will, was amongst themselves, these teams. And, a lot of these hitters know their own pitchers, and these pitchers know the hitters. But so I wonder if maybe that 50 at bats maybe would be extended to more, since you're not really facing live pitching from an opponent. Is that the right way to think, or am I kind of off base on that?
No, it's pretty close. It's kind of splitting hairs a little bit. Like you
right.
said, the pitchers, if you're facing your own pitchers, you do kind of know what they're doing.
Right.
But you're also working on things also as a hitter. You're working on your vision. You're working on something that you would like to have ready to go for the season, whether that's going the other way.
Right.
Whether working on something in your approach. You're still tweaking a little bit. There's never going to be until you get yourself to the place to where you're facing in competition in front of 40,000 people and it really counts.
Right.
Then, nothing. Spring training does not do anything other than keep you in shape or get you in shape and get you a few looks. Right. And then you flip the switch and game on.
Right. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, so that's good. I'm glad you brought up the kind of the approach, because I wanted to ask you about the mental aspect here. Obviously, during a typical season, you come out of spring training, you've got 162 games, you've got over 500 at bats, if you're a regular starter. Now you've got 60 games, right? So that if you start out slow the first month, that's half your season. You're behind the eight ball, you may not be able to recover. What's your approach mentally going into a short season like this, and kind of in the back of your mind knowing that, hey, I need to get off to a pretty good start here because I have so few at bats?
Well, you would have to play towards your strength, even though that you see, how do I say it the best way? Even though you would play towards your strengths in a full season, you're really going to try to optimize every at bat.
Right.
Every walk is a big deal.
Right.
Every good swing that you pull off. You definitely want to try to get, at least you're going to try to get you at least one good swing off on a pitch and hopefully two.
Right.
And you're going to be looking in a place that you want. You want the inner half, the outer half, or you want just directly up the middle, depending on what you're trying to do for that year. And it's the mindset. We can talk hours about the mindset of what the different places that you can look as a hitter, the different pitches that you're going to look for as a hitter. But in a short season like this, I would set in my area and let it go as many times as I can, and allow the pitchers to maybe work deeper in the count for me. If they don't hit theirs, or they don't come into my area, then I'm going to be I'm going to be less likely to swing the bat.
Makes sense. Yeah. Let me ask you. Let's switch bases a little bit. I want to ask you about something that Joseph and I were talking about. You look at this year and you're seeing teams like Tampa Bay, the Rays, they were pretty good last year, but they're leading their division. The Marlins are having a great year, and they obviously weren't picked as a team that could maybe make the playoffs. The Padres are having a good year. You're seeing a lot of teams playing well in this short season that normally, at least in the recent past, have not been really contenders. So is it possible that, a lot of these teams are looking at this and saying, hey, we really don't have a minor league system this year. We've got this alternate training site where we could keep certain players there to move up and down if need be. But I think a lot of teams are maybe saying, hey, let's look at a lot of guys that we thought maybe were close to making the major leagues. Let's go ahead and bring them up, So a lot of teams maybe are benefiting from the chance to get to look at some of these guys, whereas teams like the Yankees or the Dodgers, teams that want to win all the time, maybe are a little hesitant to do that. Or do you think that's kind of an on-base way to look at it?
Yeah, I think that you're pretty close by saying that. Of course, I mean it's an opportunity to definitely see what your what your minor league system would look like. I think what they had. I hate to say this, but I'm being uneducated when I say the roster has expanded to like 50 guys, 60 guys, something of that nature. There's a travel squad, there's a pass squad or something.
Right.
And it gives guys a great opportunity to get a shot, and then it also gives the players or it gives the managers and the front office time to see them a little bit. There is a little bit of problem in there, though, as far as it would as you bring a player up, it's counted as a day in the big leagues.
Right.
So you got to be kind of careful how that algorithm works because that counts towards your retirement.
Right.
So it'll be you have to pick and choose a little bit. You just can't throw 60 guys in there and rotate because then you got guys the after baseball time also is involved.
Right. Yeah, you've got obviously a lot of things going on with service time and club control with players and things like that. But one thing that was I'm glad you brought that up because one thing that I think teams gain advantage from is when they bring up these young guys is energy. Right, you got guys that maybe have never been in the big leagues before. This is their shot, so they're playing to stick around, right? Whereas if you've got a 10, 12-year veteran, it's on a long deal. He sees it as, okay, it's a 60-game season. There's no fans. I'm getting a prorated salary. I'm sure there are some guys out there that would rather just not play the season. Maybe it's showing a little bit in their play. They're kind of just going through the motions, whereas these young guys are coming up, to stick around with energy. Do you think that's a little bit going on somewhat?
I would believe so. I'd hate to say that, but because I'll take the Pete Rose effect. Let's go out and win every day.
Right.
Play hard every day. Let's do this thing. But there is some less than that sort of thought process out there. So but you also have to realize that yes, it's a 60-game season. Everybody's going to look at it, and there's going to be two sides of the fence. Okay, we did well here, we didn't do well there. So what? Let's move on to the next season. And players would look at it and say, okay, well, I'm not going to break my ankle in a 60-game season. That's not going to matter anymore. Because if I break my ankle, I'm done next year.
Right.
If that's part of my game, I'm not going to tear my elbow up, shoulder issue as far as a pitcher. If I'm, it's going to be handled with kid gloves for sure. From the front office down to the player. I mean, you hate to call it a throwaway season. I don't know if they're treating it like that, if that answers your question, but it sure seems that it could be handled like that.
Right. And yeah, I'm not saying that's going on with everybody, but just kind of, it could be with some players or some teams, but
no, 100% that you can come to that deduction.
Right.
There's no either way.
Yeah, definitely. I did want to get your opinion on this as well. Kind of to the average fan watching out there that is used to watching games, with a full crowd, full stands. I've personally been a part of a lot of many extended spring training games. You're out there on the backfields and nobody's there. But for you as a player,
me
right?
too.
Yeah, right. But for you as a player, do the fans affect the no fans affect you whatsoever? Like if you're in a big league stadium and it's totally empty and it's 7 p.m. right? Does that have any effect whatsoever? Or is that kind of thing overblown for a player?
Well, from my standpoint, I would say that it's a little less fun, of course.
Right.
But you're looking forward to having fun. You're looking forward to. I mean, we're entertainment, and you're looking forward to entertain, show off your skills, and it's you're trying to vibe off the energy, it's but you've got TV looking at you also, so you don't want to look a fool there. You know what I'm saying? So there's a little bit of energy there, just because you got some respect for yourself. But I don't know if I mentioned your question because either way you got to play the game.
Yeah.
And either way it's competition. There's somebody out there in front of me that's going to look at me and shoot me down if he strikes me out. He's going to have his adrenaline flowing. I'm going to have my adrenaline flowing, and that from a pitcher hitter standpoint, of course. And so. When you put your right foot in or your left foot in, whichever side of the plate you want to be on, it is, you go from 0 to 60 pretty quickly.
I would agree with that.
All right, let's talk about the playoffs for a minute. I come from an old school stand. I'm an old guy, and I remember the days watching the World Series when there were only day games and
dead ball era.
Yeah, no, not quite as far back as the dead ball era, but almost that far back. But I remember when you had to win your league and there was only a World Series, all right? And then we went to 2 divisions and we had a division playoffs. Then we went to a wild card and then we went to 2 wild cards. And, now we've got, I think, 8 teams? In each side. Well, there's only, 30 teams in Major League Baseball? So half the teams now in Major League Baseball are making the playoffs.
Yeah, I think that's ridiculous.
I think it's diluted. What do you think?
Ridiculous. I'm with both of you. That's just a revenue thing. That's just that's all it is. Period. So, trying to make up some revenue that's lost and get some advertising going on and produce some excitement and lengthen. Anybody else would say, well, it's great. We're playing some ball games.
Yeah.
Which, I'll agree with that too. But, come on now, half the league, really?
Yeah, I mean, you could be. I mean,
because you could win the World Series. I mean, you are going to get a World Series ring at the end of the year. So,
right.
Just like we were, kind of messing around when we were texting. But it's a bloop and a blast. You might get a World Series. 2 bloops and a blast, you might get a World Series ring. You got 16 teams in the muddle. Anything can happen.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, and it
might have the team hasn't played worth a dang during the year, and all of a sudden they just get a little hot. You know,
right.
Like Washington Nationals coming all the way back from their slow start.
Right.
You just never know.
No. Yeah. No, I agree with you. I agree with everything you said, and you're right on. I mean, it's all revenue, it's all advertising, it's all, all that stuff. But I just think at some point, even the NFL did it this year. They added another team, and I think at some point it becomes somewhat ridiculous, because to the average fan, I guess, who doesn't know anything about baseball, maybe they love it. The person that just goes to the games, buys the little foam finger, buys their popcorn and beer, and just cheers and goes home. But to the baseball purist or someone who understands the game at all, it just doesn't make any sense. And I just hope that they're not hurting the game in some way. But maybe I'm wrong on that. I don't know.
No, I agree with you 100% because, you got to think all the way through everything that's happening. I mean, you got to play the tape till the end. That's always my saying. Whatever you're doing, play that tape to the end and see what happens. You got guys, it's going in the record book. So guys are going to be in the record books.
Correct.
For, somebody out of the 16 teams, the guy goes 5 for 5 with 5 home runs. He's the first guy that's ever done that in the playoffs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. So now we want to switch base a little bit, and I'll let Joseph kind of lead into that. Go ahead.
Yeah, so, kind of going off what we were just talking about there with the playoffs, back in, I think it was April, we had our, we did a few episodes with crowning our Ultimate World Series champion of the past 50 years. Have you had a chance to look over the bracket a little bit?
I did.
Okay. All right.
No,
I'll let you.
I did.
I'll go ahead and let you start there with your initial thoughts on what we had there.
Well, I think you guys did a great job with the matchup. I mean, the Yankees taking it all, and that was I think you guys are spot on. I mean, that was a train rolling through anything that was ever in front of them. I don't care at what time. Just an amazing team that was. But of course, it was my Mets. I'm going back to my roots because that was, I was drafted in '87. So, of course, '86, I didn't even have any idea I was going to get drafted. I was just watching baseball.
Right.
So.
And let me say this before you go forward. The Mets left a lot of World Series on the table during that span too. They had a team that should have won 2 or 3 of them.
They did. They had a great team. Yes, they sure did. And it's kind of like Atlanta Braves making the playoffs never in the World Series type of thing.
Right.
So they did. They had a good team. It was honestly, it was an honor to be a Met during those times.
Sure.
Yeah. Those were fun times, but the bracket, the way you guys came up with it, I know that had to be a lot of thought processes going through there. I'm sure that took some time. As I looked at it, took some good time. So well done. But except for those Arizona Diamondbacks.
Yeah, no, that's what I was gonna ask you about. We were talking before the episode, or texting before the episode a little bit. What are your thoughts on that Diamondbacks team? And we put them in there for the fact that they basically broke up the Yankee dynasty, right? And it was one of the all-time classic World Series. What are your thoughts on that team?
Well, it's a good team. Of course, you had the power to pitching staff,
right.
And that's what's going to get you through a short season. Johnson and Schilling, that's going to get you through a short, not a season, a short
series.
World Series.
Yeah.
Going back to the bloops and the blasts, the Arizona Diamondbacks, I'm familiar with them because I finished my career with the Diamondbacks, and some of those guys were my teammates, and it just they had a great season, give them that, but I never would have been there by shattering the Yankees' dream if it wasn't a Tony Womack broken bat, right?
Right. That's right. Yeah. No, that's and also I thought you were right on with one of your texts that you sent. All the stars definitely lined up because the Yankees, if I remember, hit a home run in the top of the 8th inning to take the lead off of Schilling, and then that's about the only time that Mariano Rivera ever blew a World Series save.
Exactly.
And that's it's interesting you brought up the 1-2 punch of Schilling and Johnson there. Just in general, when you look at a bracket like this, some of the teams in there, you've got the 95 Atlanta Braves with that pitching staff. And then you've got some teams where maybe their lineup was their strength. When you're trying to break down some of these matchups, in your opinion, do you favor a team with a top flight pitching staff or maybe more of a top flight lineup? Who do you think has the advantage just in general?
Pitching staff and that pitching staff that can get you deep in the game because it doesn't have to be someone completely dominant because if you've got the completely dominant starter on your team, you're facing the completely dominant starter on their side also.
Right.
So, you got to get a little deep in the games and that's when the game becomes the real game.
Right.
Inside the game, getting a little hits, bloop here, bloop there, and that's the difference between hitting 300. We can go back to, the old saying of blooping to hit 300. And it just, the pitching staff is what you need. And that's where the Yankees were so dominant to be able to close games out. You knew all you had to do was have one run.
Right.
And that was it.
Right.
And it shut it down. And then Rivera comes in, shuts you down. So it's a pitching staff, but it doesn't have to be that big, strong pitching staff. It has to be some people eat up some innings. Your middle relief's got to be there for you in case something blows up because you can't have your starting pitcher going too long in his first game. If he just doesn't have his stuff, that you got to have relief. You got to put the pieces together as a manager as the game proceeds on. But pitching, to answer your question.
So what do you think about and So you're in agreement that the '98 Yankees were the greatest World Series team. And again, this was only in the last 50 years, so we're not getting into the dead ball era as you looked at it. But so you agree that the '98 Yankees were probably the greatest in the last 50 years?
I would agree. And in the era that you can say where baseball kind of became, you can go back to Murderers Row and that those sort of years and that type of play back then when pitching was, the next guy, your starting pitcher might throw 30 games. You know what I'm saying? So, when the game started getting a little bit more new.
Right.
Yeah.
What's
for sure.
What do you think about? Let me ask you this. I just popped in my head. You seem to be. You're an old school guy. I mean, you came up in an era when you tried to get a hit. That was the whole thing. Advanced runners, get a hit, go opposite field. Do what it takes to get on base. What do you think about the game today? I mean, today it seems like it's all swing for the fences. They don't care if you strike out 200 times. If you hit 50 home runs, you're a millionaire. And to me, that's not really baseball. But what do you think about that?
You're exactly correct. That it's more, again, it's entertainment. So you're walking up there as a hitter, and you're supposed to hit 30 or 40 home runs. That's all they're talking about before the season even starts.
Right.
So it, you're living up to whatever you've been hyped up to be, and that's your specialty. That's what you're supposed to do. And the game is not really. If you ask a player if it came between a win and loss as to whether or not he would give up what his strength would be, I would say that he would probably give up his strength to move a runner or to do something positive for the game and impact the game, except just by doing it on one swing.
Right.
I would say the majority of players would do that. Then you got other people that would not, who don't really give a rip.
Right.
But, that depends on what year their contract it is. You know what I'm saying?
Well, let me ask it this way. I hear what you're saying, but let me ask it this way. And Joseph and I have had some spirited discussions about this. But all right, let's say you're a power hitter. Okay, you're a left-handed power hitter. Okay, and you're a home run type guy. Okay. Today, they're going to put the shift on you, right? They're going to move everybody to the right side of the field, right? And put that short guy in right field. They're going to leave the left side of the field completely open, all right? So why do these guys keep trying to hit into the shift? In other words, if you bunt the ball down the third base line 4 times, you're going to go 4 for 4. And if they don't break the shift, do it again the next night. Now you're 8 for 8. You may hit 500. Yeah, you're not going to hit 50 home runs, but why will they not do that? Why not?
Well, let's see. I'll try to figure out an example. Let's say if you asked first person that comes to my mind, Mark McGuire, or let's say Canseco, or let's say, those two are just the ones that just come to my head. Or you ask Big Papi to lay down a bunt. That ain't happening. So, first of all, it's dangerous, probably. And, you might take one in the hand or something, but
let's try now.
And there's a thought process to really break it down. There's a thought process that baseball being such a game of superstition, or that's the best word I can say for you right now. But if I change my swing one at bat, and then I don't, and let's say they move the shift and take it to the other side of the field, and I go for 20, I'm going to blame it on the fact that I changed my swing.
Yeah.
Because your swing is your swing is your swing.
Yeah. I got you. Yeah.
And the only thing that you're doing differently is looking for a depth on a pitch, or you're looking for a particular pitch. Your swing's still the same. If you hit it out front a little bit, it's going to be pulled. If you hit it back in the strike zone a little bit, it's going to go the other way.
Right.
So it's so much feel that is involved once you put your feet in the box. It's so much feel that it can cause issues. And you go for 30 real quick, man. That's just a week.
Yeah.
Trust me.
That's a great.
Did it several times.
That's an underrated point too about bunting being a skill. People just think, just ask him to lay out a bunt. Well, it's not so easy. It's a skill that has to be honed, and when you face live pitching.
Oh yeah. No, it's not. I mean, even if you know how to do it,
Yeah.
it's still, it's still a bit scary. And that's one of the things that I always tried to, I always had the thought process. And when I taught, I don't know if you remember this, I feel like if you cannot bunt, you cannot hit.
Right.
And if you're a good bunter, then you're going to be able to track balls better. And I always liked, I used to use the old approach. Wade Boggs, when he was in a slump, he'd go out and he'd bunt 100 to the right side, 100 to the left side, first base side, third base side, however you want to say it. And, if you can't bunt, you're really not that well-rounded a hitter. I took pride in that, man.
Yeah. No,
I only hit one bunt in 15 years. One.
Well,
I was only asked 10 times, though, but 9 out of 10, come on.
Yeah. No, that's pretty good. I mean, and I think you really – the gem, one of the gems that you just told us, and you tell us a lot of them, but that's a great point that I never really thought of, that your swing is your swing is your swing, and if you try to start changing it, like you said, you go for 30 and right away you're below the Mendoza line before you know it.
And then you go to your A, B, C, D swing, then you go to E, F, G, on down the line, right. A, B, C, D, F, G, H, I, L, M, N, O, P.
Right. Yeah.
And you're Cal Ripken changing your stance every day.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. That's a really good point.
Yeah. So one of the last things here, talking about the bracket and kind of, and we touched a little bit on the way the game has changed. One thing that stands out to me from this bracket is kind of the old school managers that these teams had, right? You got Joe Torre, Bobby Cox, guys like Jimmy Leland, Tony La Russa. Whereas today, those are pretty much a dying breed. Now you've got kind of the shift to former players or guys that have just recently been out of the game, and the lineup or day-to-day operations are more controlled by the front office. You got a guy coming down from upstairs, basically handing the manager the lineup based on the statistics they've ran in their computer. What's your take on that whole deal and kind of where the game's going in terms of the shift from managerial instinct to just statistics?
Well, it's first of all, you make my jaws and my lips feel good when you start talking about making me slobber thinking about the old school Jim Leland's, the Torreys, that sort of stuff. Those are guys,
right?
Like you don't see that guy anymore.
No.
It's like you said, the lineup's pretty much being handed to you.
Yeah.
And it's become more of a more personable, situation. Alex Cora getting along with his guys.
Yeah.
Other managers, you're getting along with your fellas. Because if the guys are mad at you, they're not going to play for you. They're going to play for you, but they're not really.
Right.
They're not playing for you.
Yeah.
I would agree. It's just getting a little bit. It's getting a little bit friendly.
That's a good way to describe it. Yeah.
When Jim Leland spoke to me, the first words that he said to me, I only spoke to him twice. One was when he wanted to look at my hands to see if I had been doing my work. He just, let me look at your hands, Cameron. Turn them over. There it was. He didn't say nice job or whatever. He just walked away. That was it. He wasn't there to make friends.
Right.
So it was. He wanted to know what you were doing. He wanted to know what you were thinking too. I had my last session with him resulted in me being, not making a 40-man that year. But he just wanted to know what's on your mind and whether you're ready to work. The old school hard guys.
Right.
Now, Tony Russo got along with his players also, but,
right.
It's, you see that intensity. The statistics and everything is definitely coming into the game. When we go back to Bill James, Oakland and everything coming in together with that, moving on to Boston. And, that has become infectious, which it is. You got to think about that.
Right.
For sure. And it's become an art, just like stealing signs became an art, even though it was done for 100 years.
Yeah. The Houston Astros were the ones who benefited the most from COVID-19 in the baseball world because it took the focus off them.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Those guys would have taken multiple pitches to the head if there would have never been COVID-19, probably.
Yeah.
Well, Stanton.
No, I agree with you. It's got it it would have been interesting.
Yes, it would have been. It would have been very.
But it will be interesting next year, I promise you.
Yeah,
those teams haven't forgotten.
Yeah, they haven't forgotten. That's exactly right. Well, Stanton, we could probably talk for like 10 hours, but we certainly appreciate you coming on. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. You have some tremendous insights, and let's do this again sometime soon.
Yeah, so definitely. And I hate that we haven't kept a closer touch. It's been just a kind of a wild ride over the last 2 or 3 years. So.
Yeah, it has, but we'll take part of the responsibility for that, and we'll do a better job of staying in touch. So you take care of yourself and be safe, okay?
All right. See you, Joseph.
All right.
See you. All right, we want to thank Stanton Cameron for joining us today on the Press Box Podcast. He talked a little Major League Baseball with us. And speaking of Major League Baseball, the Major League Baseball playoffs will start here very soon. And be sure to look for an episode where we break down the playoffs and some of those matchups that are coming up. Remember, expanded to 8 teams in each league this year, so it should be interesting. So if you enjoyed the episode, let us know on Twitter. Follow us on Twitter, at PressBoxPod. We always like to hear feedback about our episode, especially when we have guests like Stanton. And hopefully we can have him again on sometime in the future as well. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on the Press Box Podcast.